Hey everyone, welcome on into another episode. Justine Fernandez alongside Jillian Mealy. And today's topic is a request that we got from someone, specifically Jillian got on social media. I am going to read it word for word. Take on what it means to be a high value woman in 2024, facing fears and following dreams. I love the request and the topic. And before we dive in, I just want to say Jillian and I are also works in progress. We all want to be
Yes.
high value. So these are our thoughts, recognizing we are not foremost experts in this topic and are still works in progress ourselves. But Jillian, what did you think when you got this request?
I loved it because I loved the part about facing fears and following dreams. Because for those who have listened along this journey with us since we started this podcast, that's really been what our lives have been about, is facing those fears and following those dreams. And I think for me, when I question myself, what does it mean to be a high value woman? I think just from very recent experience that both of us can speak to, being able to get to a point where you can have that confidence to say, you know what? I recognize my value. I
Mm-hmm.
recognize my worth. I know what I bring to the table. I know boundaries that I've set for myself, things I don't want to tolerate, things I don't want to do. I know things that I'm fearful about, risks that I'm fearful about, but that I'm at a place where I'm confident enough and comfortable enough within my own skin to say, you know what? I can actually do that. To have that confidence in yourself to say, you know what? I'm taking this leap of faith. I'm taking this risk and I'm going to do it. That's up there for me. That's one of
Mm-hmm.
those things. Is that one of yours?
Yes, when I was thinking about, well, first, how do I describe a high value woman? And these could be things that I see in other people that I look up to,
Mhm.
is that first thing that you touched on, and that they know their worth and their value, and they don't settle for anything less than that, whether it be work, personally, or otherwise. And I think a high value woman in my mind has goals, has ambitions, has values, and they do their best to live their life according to that. They make decisions according to what are they trying to achieve, knowing their own value and worth, and what are the values that are absolutely non-negotiable for me, and this is how I'm going to live my life.
I agree with everything you just said. I also think it can be, and Justine and I actually talked about doing a whole other episode on insecurities and things like that. So I just want to preface all of this by saying we both have them. We both have things, as you mentioned, Justine, that we're a work in progress. We have things that we're working on. I think the ability to self reflect and in those moments be able to say, you know what, I might not have done my best job at that, whether it be in a conversation, in a work situation, just in your own personal life, to be able to say, you know, I could have done better, and then improve on that and self-reflect on that.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that that's one of those things that creates a high value person, when you're
Sure.
willing to look inside yourself and say, I can be better.
I agree with that. And something else I put down that maybe in the first few thoughts of thinking about it, you might not come up with this, but I wrote down two things. And that one, they show gratitude because they can recognize the value and good in others. This is things, easy things like even saying thank you and recognizing somebody else for their hard work, because it's not always you. And so much in life, it's about how you can work with others. And so I thought that shows value and that you can also recognize the good in others. And I wrote that I think a high value woman person can engage with anyone. Anyone. This could be an executive, this could be somebody working on the front line of a corporation or in a
Mhm.
manufacturing center. I think that example is top of mind for me because I have clients in that space in my day job. I think being able to have a conversation to appreciate people from all walks of life is really important.
Yes. Now, I agree, but I also will offer this sort of counter to that.
Hmm.
There are a lot of people who I think are very high value who may be really shy, or maybe really sort of uncomfortable in certain social settings or within their skin, or just get nervous. And I don't think that that means that you're not high value, but I think that's where the whole like self reflection comes in. How do I self improve? How do I get myself to a point where I can be that person, Justine, that you're referencing, where you can interact in any situation and you can feel comfortable in any situation? Because I think at the end of the day, being comfortable in your own skin and being proud of who you are, and walking into a room and feeling that way, I think just makes, if everyone could be that way, my goodness, I think the world would be a better place, because there wouldn't be jealousy. There wouldn't be like people gossiping behind each other's backs and stuff. And I think that that's really where wanting to improve yourself and wanting to be the best version of yourself
Mm-hmm.
you can be comes into play.
Absolutely. And I think I like your point in that I think a lot of times we associate those qualities of walking into a room confident and engaging with an extrovert. But I certainly think somebody who's more introverted and has their own unique presence doesn't exclude them from being in
Mhm.
that high value category at all.
Absolutely. I think having goals, I think having dreams and aspirations for yourself. I think, look, we can all have different goals. We can all have different dreams and set different boundaries and have different ladders and hills to climb. But it's really whatever value you see in it and what you want your life to be, I think is what makes it high value for yourself. Like for me, I, as you know, have made this shift in my career and in my life. And I'm not going to lie to you. Like I'm sort of walking around a little aimlessly right now, trying to figure out exactly what this all looks like on the end. That doesn't mean that I don't consider myself a high value person. It just means that I still have work to do. And to your point from the very beginning, being able to recognize that, being able to say, okay, this is okay. This is the zone I'm in right now. This is the
Mm-hmm.
phase I'm in my life right now. And having acceptance of yourself at different points in your life, in different
Mm-hmm.
phases of your life, I think is really critical too, to be able to accept where you are in your life and who you are in your life, and then take from that where you want to go and who you want to become.
I think what you're describing too is having a learner's mindset and that we're all works in progress. We all have things to work on and to learn and to grow. And having goals, having things, and continuing to learn is self fulfilling. And not only does it add value to your life, it feels really good to work on those things, to learn and look back and say, hey, maybe I didn't get what I wanted out of XYZ, but I learned in the process. Look at what I know how to do now.
Well, yes. And actually, truthfully, that's part of what has been so inspiring to me about going back to school. And we're going to dive into this more in a separate episode, but learning more, getting myself outside of that box has brought a lot of value to my life. Challenging myself. I think when you can challenge yourself in different ways, that makes you a high value person anyway, rather than just sitting stagnant and sort of plateauing and being comfortable and letting life pass you by, taking opportunities to grab them and be like, you know what, this is going to be hard, but I accept
Mm-hmm.
the challenge.
And these, I think, could be small things too. This could be taking a Spanish class online,
Mm-hmm.
little things that you can incorporate. Doesn't mean you have to throw everything you're working on out the window. But I think finding those opportunities, even if they're small or minimal commitment, to continue learning and
Mm-hmm.
growing.
I
Jillian,
have
what?
another one.
Oh,
Can
go
I?
ahead.
Yeah, I think it's being someone that can be trusted. I think when it comes to your friends and your family and even coworkers, having people know that they can tell you things in confidence goes a long way for being a high value person, being a high value woman as well. Because especially as a female, Justine, you know this, and I'm not going to speak for guys because I'm not going to pretend to know, but there are a lot of girls groups, friend groups, women groups where you've got the people
Mm-hmm.
talking behind themselves, behind other people, gossiping, the chatter. And I'm not saying that's in every group, but let's be honest, it happens. I
Mm-hmm.
think being able to be a woman or a young woman who can be relied upon and trusted to know that people can come to you with things, I think really adds a lot when you're talking about value.
I totally hear you. And I think a lot of that, like gossiping, et cetera, it creates so much unnecessary drama and it's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
energy. And I think there's a quote that big minds talk about thoughts, talk about ideas, processes, et cetera. Small minds talk about people.
Yep.
And I feel like it's so easy to get stuck or sucked into those conversations. But knowing that you can trust the other person on the other end to go to, hey, when you're having a hard time or you need to talk to them about something more sensitive is such a huge thing.
Yeah, I agree with you.
What other tips would you give or thoughts do you have on? We've talked about and described what we think it is to be a high value person. How do you become one or step more fully into becoming a high value woman?
That's a good question. Well, I think the on one hand, I sort of answered part of that with the whole being self-reflective because that's a big thing. Honestly, I'm doing a lot of that in my life right now. So that's like very forefront for
Mm-hmm.
me. Outside of that though, I think being a high value person is just it's practicing what you preach. I think when you say you want to be a good friend or you want to be a good partner, like do the work that it takes to do those things. If you want to be a good employee or a good boss or a good leader, doing the things that it takes to be that person. It's very easy to say, I want to be this way. I want to
Mm-hmm.
be this type of person. I think it's much more difficult to actually put all of that into action
Mm-hmm.
sometimes.
And that's where I think integrity comes in. And you can say a lot of things, but how are you acting and following through on those things?
What about you? What else would you say?
I have a couple small things. I think that we do not read enough. And this is coming from somebody
Ooh.
who's on a computer all day. So it can be really hard to read a book and read fine print. I think a high value person, it goes into that learner's mindset of you are reading. And this is a personal growth book on a topic that interests you. And it could also be a book for fun. I usually have two that I'm kind of alternating and reading at the same time. And one that's going to help me with personal growth or business growth or whatever it might be, one that is more a for fun book. Let me escape. Let me go read this book and go be transported somewhere else.
Like romance novels, that's what you're saying, right?
Exactly. Or yes,
That's
a
your
novel. Yeah. I don't know about romance,
I'm
but some
kidding.
sort of novel. I think the one I am currently reading is quite romantic. So it would fall into that category.
I'm envisioning those romance novels from like back in the day when you'd have some like man with like flowing hair, like this, like built body and everything on
On
the
a
cover. Like that.
horse.
I don't know if they exist anymore, but that's
I'm
sort of where
sure
my
they
mind
do.
went. No, but actually, so as you're saying this, I have a few weeks left until I'm finished my MBA program. So I've been reading a lot of textbooks and things that wouldn't be my first choice, but again, happy to do it. But I'm going to take you, you didn't offer this challenge to me, but I'm going to take a challenge from you. I'm going to accept a challenge from you. Okay. If I could do that. And when I'm done school in these next few weeks, I am going to start reading some of those books that you talk about, like even just self help books, even just books that help you escape, books about sports, anything to just kind of get your mind learning and processing different things because I don't do that. I haven't read a book outside of a textbook in years. And I think that that's a really valuable thing that we can do, even just like a few pages every night before you go to bed.
To be fair, I didn't read much in my MBA either because you're taking in so much new information that it's hard to also read. And I'm not perfect in this area. I just mentioned I spend a lot of time on the computer. So it can be hard to, even just for your eyes, your mind, to sit down and read. But I do think it's kind of a critical piece to grow, expand, and pick up new things.
Yeah, I agree. So I will accept the challenge that you didn't offer.
I also have a thought here, and Jillian, it kind of relates to where we spent a lot of time in our careers, and that I think in order to be high value, you need to be somewhat up on current events. You
Oh,
need to know what's
yes.
happening in the world. For
Hmm.
example, and this is not a politics conversation, you should have some sort of sense at this point, since there's an election in November. Who are the presidential candidates? Who are you interested in? What are some of the policies that are going to be discussed? If you think
I
about women,
agree.
we fought for a long time for the right to vote. Please exercise that right.
I agree. And yes, we are not here to tell you our political beliefs or go deep into a politics conversation. But with that said, I think you are 100% right. I have taken a lot of pride in myself over my years in broadcasting and as a journalist because I really did feel a sense of pride knowing what was going on, being up on current events, being able to speak to issues on both sides of the aisle. And I will be the first one to tell you, and I haven't really admitted this publicly, I've admitted this in my circles and stuff, but as of I'd say maybe, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, I look back now and I can actually say I was a pretty uneducated citizen. And I was up on current events and stuff. But when I started diving more into working in national television and following international news, there's so much more that we can learn and so much more I think that we should pay attention to. And
Hmm.
once my eyes were really open to what was going on internationally, I was like, wow, I really wasn't paying as much attention as I could have and should
Hmm.
have before. Does that make sense? Because like I was paying
Yes.
attention to what was going on within our country, but there's so much more out there that affects us. And I have my eyes so open to everything now. So
Hmm.
now I feel like a super educated member of society. Whereas I can say within the last 10 years, like I'd say 7 or so years ago, I look back now and I'm like, I wish I learned more then.
And it's hard because, sometimes after a long day, you want to watch a show where you're going to escape. It's hard. Again, these are things that you need to be curious about, learn about. And there's ways to do it with podcasts or turning on the news or whatever it might be. But I
Mhm.
also think, Jillian, these are the things that people discuss. For example, I was on my mini honeymoon recently. We were at the beach, and where we were, there was a lot of older, more secure people in their career. And so there was a lot of interesting conversations. Two of the things that came up were the student loan crisis and the
Mm.
migrant crisis. If
Mhm.
you do not know that is going on in our country, it's really hard to then find your voice and be able to have a conversation of, no, you're not the foremost expert, but you're seeing what's going on with it and you're able to offer, oh, that's interesting. Here's what I think.
Yes. And not only just know that it's going on, but know all sides of it to be able to have an educated conversation about it because you can know that something's going on. You can watch this channel or that channel and get 2 or 3 or 4 totally different sides on issues. And I mean, honestly, that's a whole other conversation,
Mhm.
but I feel like there's so much opinion out there in news anymore and not enough just like here are the facts, of what's going on. It's up to us, I think, to really do that. And when you're educated on these issues, you've done that from all sides to be able to formulate how you truly feel about it, how it's going to affect your life, how you want it to affect your life, what do you want to do about it in terms of voting and things like that, and then also to just be able to carry a conversation
Mhm.
where you go into and you are part of, and then leave that conversation feeling proud of yourself that you're able to have those educated conversations.
Mhm. And I think going along with that, if we're thinking about how do I find myself in or find my way into a conversation, have really impactful conversations, I think you need to have hobbies, interests, passions. This
Mhm.
is not Netflix. This is not collecting designer things. This is, I have an interest and passion in this area because let me tell you, you talk about something that you're passionate about
Mhm.
and people want to listen.
Okay, so what's yours?
So, I obviously very passionate about sports. I
Mhm.
dedicate a lot of my time to women's basketball. So, and that is something that I have talked to business owners, senior leaders about because, hey, there's this girl. Her name's Caitlin Clark. She is huge. These are entryways into conversations. And for me, there's also this fact of, hey, I'm lifting up other women. And that's really important to me. The second
Yeah.
thing is that I spend a large amount of my time outside of work mentoring students. A lot of MBA students who come to me and are like, hey, how do I get into consulting? How do I make a career transition? So that is another thing where I spend a decent amount of my time outside of work. And I'm really interested and invested in helping other people get somewhere with their careers. What about you?
No, that's all wonderful. So, actually, I've been mentoring a number of students from Notre Dame. And so I love mentoring students as well. And it wasn't truthfully always something I necessarily had all of the time in the world to do because when I was working, I spent the last 15 years of my career waking up at midnight,
Right.
working through the night, being exhausted all day long, and then going to bed around 6 o'clock at night, but also trying to get in like a few hour nap there in the morning and
Hmm.
then try to, work out if I had the energy that day. So I just didn't always have the mental strength, if you will, because I was exhausted. So now I love doing that. That's become one of my passions for sure. A passion really has been the last few years, and it's a little bit selfish, but a passion has been school. A passion has been finding new avenues and new ways to get better, to grow, to challenge myself. And I've loved that. But now that that's coming to a close soon, I've actually said to a number of people, I feel like I'm about to have like a mini identity crisis because, and like I joke about it, but I actually think it's going to happen because I'm about to have so much more time on my hands. And I'm like, what is that going to look like? What am I going to do? Who am I going to be? Like, I'm not going to have to be on my computer reading these textbooks, getting these assignments submitted every Wednesday or Thursday or Sunday by midnight. And so having more passions, I think that's why I accepted the challenge that you didn't offer earlier, like reading books and things. I think I'm about to be in a phase of my life where I find out
Hmm.
more of what truly makes me passionate. I do love sports. I'm passionate about sports. I love golf. I'm passionate about playing golf. It's something that I just have a great time doing. I have fun. It relaxes me. So there are definitely passions I have, but I think I'm on the cusp of this next phase of my life where this whole other world that I'm not expecting is about to open up, and I don't even know what
Hmm.
that's going to look like.
And I think for a lot of us, Jillian, our work becomes us that, and it's demanding, it's long hours. And I think once you get to being more senior in your career and you start to have some windows of time, that's when you're like, you have to develop yourself outside of work and you have hobbies and have interests because that also goes into the work life balance equation too. You cannot just work, that cannot be your sole activity to be fulfilled as a person.
Yes. And so for those listening, I'm curious if people would like us to talk more about that. Like I really do think I'm about to have a mini identity crisis where that's concerned. And I'm happy I'm an open book with a lot of this stuff. I'm an open book with the challenges that I faced and the difficulties, but also the highs of it and the exciting factors of it. But as we talked about, like we'll have a whole other episode on our insecurities. I'm happy to take people through this process because I know a lot of people either have been there where they've made significant changes, or they're thinking about making significant changes, or they're afraid to make significant changes. But I know because we've heard from them that a lot of people are in this camp where they're like, wow, this resonates with me
Mhm.
because, and they can fill in the blank of what phase they're at with their journey. But I'm happy to do that. And I think that's part of being high value too, is just being able to say like, hey, this has been a tough time for me, or hey, this has been, here are the highs, here are the lows, here's what's going to happen, here's what you can expect, here's how I've been able to deal with it, and be
Mhm.
able to be vulnerable and share along with your journey. Because I think, I don't know, not enough people really express the difficulties or the lows of things sometimes.
Mhm. I know, and especially with social media where everything's a highlight reel, and I love that you're leaning in. And I think so often in life we get in this go 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 that we don't really get the time to sit back, to pause and not have to be somewhere every minute of the day. It can be really scary because we're so used to this high pace, especially in journalism and
Yes.
especially in an MBA
Oh my
program,
gosh.
among many other places, which I'm sure, as we heard from a lot of you around the work life balance episode, are also in the same current dynamic.
Yes. So please, everyone, send me your positive thoughts and pray for me. No, I'm just kidding.
Any other tips or thoughts before we sign off?
No, but you know what? Okay, so when Justine and I talk about different, topics that we want to discuss on this podcast, we'll just, because we want to be in agreement on the topics that we cover. And we'll just send a few little like bullet points. Like we never know actually what the person on the other end of this is going to fully say. We just know sort of an idea of like topics and stuff. There was one on the list that you mentioned, and he talked about swear words, and it made me laugh because I swear I curse all the time. I really do. No, not in public settings, not in formal
That's what I
events,
was gonna say.
like not I'm not like that. But I've surprised a few people with the language sometimes that can come out of my mouth.
But definitely probably not in a work setting or when you were on the
No.
air.
No.
And I think that's the one thing in journalism, it drills into you the language, the vocabulary. You remove the ums and the uhs, which I still say all the time. But I do think vocabulary, grammar matters more than people like to give it credit.
Yes. Yes, it does. And just I think being eloquent and being, I don't know, like uplifting and positive and being able to hold conversations and being able to write emails and things like that that are, as you mentioned, proper grammar and
Mm-hmm.
professional. I think those are all important factors that go into just being a high value person in general, but
To
especially
the,
for female.
to the best of everyone's ability. We all
Yes.
make mistakes here and there.
But I will still drop some, bombs every now and then. So pick your letter in front of it. Not on this podcast, though. We're trying to be positive role models here in the comfort of my own
Well,
home.
we took a pass at this for women. Again, with the caveat, we are not perfect. We are works in progress in this area. And some of what we shared, we aspire to, or we see in other women that we admire. This was a request. So if you would like us to take a pass on being a high value man or the
Ooh.
men that we like to work for, the men we like to surround ourselves with in personal or professional, let us know because we do pay attention to what you are asking of us on social media. But Jillian, I think this was a really fun conversation and I really appreciate the request.
Or here's another thought, and I'm just throwing this out there. Maybe we can ask the people listening if they'd like. Maybe we can bring on some of our high value men in our lives and have a conversation with them. Could be something
There's a
to
thought
think about.
too. The wheels are turning.
Yes, they are. On that note.
Well, thanks for tuning in. TBD what comes next, but we know we'll see you on the next episode of Credentialed.